It's the most powerful show on television. High drama with intense energy. A show dedicated to a few brave souls who risk their lives for the sake of their craft. Its in-depth reporting goes to the core and unlocks the mysteries behind today's raciest sport. Motorsports. Catch it when you can.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Post Tech. We are now on episode number 6, coming off of the whole weekend of festivities at the Sonoma Raceway in NASCAR's Camping World Truck Series and Cup Series that was marred by quite a few scary accidents. And to start off, let's break the seriousness of the situation by just talking a little bit about the fun part of the whole weekend, which was Anthony Alfredo scoring the win at the end of the NASCAR Cup Series race, beating out Martin Truex Jr., in that final restart, which unfortunately ended under caution. But complete elation for Anthony Alfredo, scoring his first career Cup Series win. In fact, that was his only 4th career start. Quite the impressive note. Jan Magnussen won in his 2nd career start at the Roval back in 2019. Anthony Alfredo wins in his 4th career start at the Sonoma Raceway. The road courses are producing a lot of young winners, even knowing Magnussen had a whole lot more experience, especially on road courses, than Anthony Alfredo has at the moment. But Alfredo winning, we also had quite a few losers, including Kyle Larson, who almost won his 2nd consecutive Toyota Save Mart 350. Unfortunately, had that tire unravel within the closing 5 laps, which completely knocked that 57 car out of winning contention. In fact, he had to pit with the pace car, so he was way behind the field on that final restart, had absolutely no way of catching up because the next caution would have ended the race, and it did. So that 57 car lost a whole lot of track position, didn't really come out with a good day, but what it did show for LGR is that they have race-winning pace. They just have yet to be able to put together an entire race to actually get there and get into victory lane. Even though in this one might have been just bad luck, you still need to have luck and success to get into victory lane. And Denny Hamlin. This is not the first time that he's overdrove in the final laps of a road course race this year in particular and ended up wrecking himself out. You recall the Busch Clash earlier in the year in February that Magnussen ended up winning? Well, the 2 drivers who wrecked there at the end of the race were Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch. The 2 drivers who wreck here at the end of the Toyota Save Mart 350 are Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch. So they had a bit of a talk after the race. It was not like the 2010 All-Star Night. They were not that upset at each other. However, there is a pretty significant problem between those two because they keep wrecking each other at the end of these races and not actually getting any track position out of their good runs. Just like Kyle Larson, you have to be able to put together your race all the way to the finish. But the most annoying part is that the 11 and 18 cars come back damaged and also not in a very good finishing position. So it's not like how, Labonte once wrecked across the start-finish line to win. Bob Seneker in an ASA race once did the same thing, but on a scale 10 times worse. I believe it was Jennerston.
Who will get the stripe first? It is going to be sideways Bob Seneker over the pit wall, and it looked like he got the door of his car across the finish line first to take the checkered flag here.
There's a lot of instances where you can wreck and win the race, but they're not doing it. They're not wrecking the right way is what I'm saying. It'd have to be a little bit of an interesting situation with the number 19 team because Martin Truex Jr. had a shot at winning that race against Anthony Alfredo. It was the JGR teammates who ended up wrecking each other there at the end that brought out the caution that did not allow Martin Truex Jr. to win the race because I feel like he would have certainly beat that number 38 car had they got the full 6 miles there to the finish. But after just 1 lap, we were back under caution because the 18 and 11 cars wrecked in turn 9. Race was over once they got on the exit of turn 11. So it was over for Martin. Even though he got a bad restart, he needed to get just a bit of a better jump on that 38 car. Might have had a shot at beating Alfredo, but he did not get what he needed there at the end. And Anthony Alfredo took his first career Cup Series win. So a lot of things have to be figured out at Joe Gibbs Racing right now. That was the closest that Truex has come to winning a race not at Dover in at least 2 years. So it does show good speed out of the number 19 car. They're currently the best Joe Gibbs car of the last couple weeks Hamlin's been involved in controversy after controversy. Kyle Busch hasn't ran up front since Texas. Fortunately for him, he's got that win, securing himself into the playoffs. And Brandon Jones has been very well underperforming compared to what was expected after his 6th-place points finish last year in the 81 car. He moved over to the 20. Things have not been going so well for that organization. They've DNQ'd a couple times. They wrecked out at Sonoma with Ricky Stenhouse Jr., even knowing that accidental karma caught the number 47 with him going upside down. I'll get into that in just a little bit. But let's just mention another point situation as well. Kevin Harvick, after wrecking there at Sonoma Raceway, you would have thought he would have dropped quite a few more points down than just a little over 20 or so. But he actually went just a couple points back because the drivers he was competing with also had struggles at Sonoma. Matt DiBenedetto moved all the way up into 2nd without a win this season, but he's 19 points out of the point lead at the moment. So DiBenedetto really is outperforming expectations because even though he has 2 career Cup Series wins, especially that Coke 600 win last season, which nobody saw that one coming, but you wouldn't quite expect him to be 2nd in points at this time of the year with only Kevin Harvick above him. It really shows you something about Matty D's consistency in that 2 car. I guess it's what he really needed to be successful, was to get from the Wood Brothers to Rogers' in-house team. Wood Brothers need to figure out some success also with Austin Cindric. Even though they won a stage at the Sonoma Raceway, they need to figure out some of their oval speed. They had a good run going at Texas, which didn't really work out the way they wanted, but before that, they were DNQing for pretty much every single race, so they need to get some speed going in that number 21 car. But it's expected out of Austin Cindric to kind of have a bit of struggle coming in because this is his first full-time season. Even though he ran 10 races last year, which is not why he's not a rookie this season, it's still only his first full-time year, so there's a lot of development that goes on in your first season. Same situation for Harrison Burton in the number 95. People were expecting him to do really good. It's not really working out as much as they expected, even though they almost won at Louisville. And Tyler Ankram's just been caught up in bad luck all season long. He's another driver who is not eligible for the Rookie of the Year honors, but is in their first full season. Ankram will likely get some of that speed together at the end of the year, but that team's having a hard time adjusting to a full-time Cup Series schedule in particular because they just ran part-time last year, GMS Racing. And so let's talk a little bit about the SMI Sonoma Raceway press conference that happened earlier today on Wednesday morning. What Marcus Smith has announced is that turns 1 and 2 will have a sand trap lining the outside of them, so a wreck like Jack Hawksworth cannot happen at such a high rate of speed. I believe it was 62 miles an hour that Hawksworth hit the wall going. That's just a little bit under, an interstate speed limit. And people get hurt on interstates all the time. I'm sure you know that. Even though that these are, race cars, they're built with a whole lot more safety features in mind than just your average passenger car, which I personally believe is backwards. But still, that was a very scary accident because not only did he hit that wall and come to an almost complete stop, but he was hit driver's side by Magnussen. So that was a little bit concerning as well because Magnussen was also going 62 miles an hour. Also, turn 11 is being modified all the way through to the end of the front straightaway. You recall those tire barriers that Ricky Stenhouse Jr. hit while being upside down? Well, fortunately, he was sliding passenger side first into the tire barrier, not driver's side first, because the way that wall is constructed, that tire barrier, it might have led to one of the tires going through and getting to Ricky. I'm not sure how far it would have been able to go through the car, but you're not exactly supposed to hit tires like that, driver's side and window net first, because he would have been upside down. Those tires are expected to hit, the side of the car, not the window net. So that would have been a very scary situation had Ricky come in and hit that upside down because it might have caught a stray tire that could have been sticking out a little bit and go in. I'm not sure if it, like I said, I'm not sure if it would have hit Ricky himself, but it's still a rather scary prospect that could have potentially happened. So turn 11 is going to be redesigned with safer barriers all the way around it, including all the way out to the front straightaway, and I'll get to that in just a minute, all the stuff that's happening on the front stretch. But safer barriers all the way, then foam on the outside of turn 11, because even though a safer barrier is very much a safety benefit compared to the old concrete walls that we used to have, if you hit one straight like you can at turn 11 at Sonoma, say your brakes fail, you're still probably going to get hurt because you just hit a wall dead straight. It's not like how the safer barriers that we have at, let's just say, Charlotte. You can't really get a straight impact into those walls. If you lose your brakes or something goes wrong in turn 11 at Sonoma, you hit a dead straight wall. So there's going to be foam lining the walls, much like what you used to see at Flemington back when the Camping World Truck Series and everything else used to run there, and what you sometimes see at Toledo Speedway in Ohio. Foam lining the racetrack in turn 11 instead of tires, just in case we get another car that goes upside down and they unfortunately hit the wall driver's side first, because we need something that can't go through that window net. This might not sound right, but if you hit the wall like that with your driver's side, it obviously won't break. There's no obstructions in it. It's a smooth surface, so when the roll cage hits it, it doesn't go in any. It has nowhere to go. When there's small tires all surrounding it, let's just imagine this is a tire, it can go into the window net, which was the major concern out of SMI. So that's why we'll be seeing foam lining turn 11. Now onto the front straightaway. Safer barriers on both sides, and in fact, SMI is considering utilizing the drag strip also as just widening out the front straightaway, making it the front stretch of the road course and the drag strip, giving the driver some extra room as runoff, going off the wreck that happened with Tyler Ankrum when he got on top of the wall separating the drag strip and the road course. If we widen that out to where you can utilize both the drag strip and the road course, that doubles your racing surface and allows you to potentially hit the wall at less of a high rate of speed, because if you get turned like Ankrum did, you'd have time to slow down from sliding your tires sideways so you wouldn't hit the wall at such a straight angle. That would mean that the inside wall that we already know that has been had to be hot fixed, I guess you could say, after Brendan Poole's wreck in the Camping World Truck Series. That wall will be safer barriers as well, but also the outside wall of the drag strip, the right-hand side of the strip, will be safer barriers. Now, when the NHRA runs there, it will be left and right side safer barriers, which is rather unique for a drag strip, by the way, because they pretty much only use concrete walls. There's going to be concrete, obviously, on the outside of the safer barrier to keep 330-mile-an-hour dragsters from going through it, because they'd probably go through a traditional safer barrier wall. But beyond that, the left side of the drag strip, so imagine you're driving down the drag strip, the left side wall, which is adjacent to the road course front straightaway, that wall is going to be able to be removed for the NASCAR and road course races, really anything that runs the road course layout, so that it can be widened out. That wall will be put back in place when the NHRA show up and other club-type drag racing series to utilize a drag strip. So more or less it's a multi-purpose front straightaway, much like it used to be when it was just the drag strip. They actually built that front straightaway that we call the front stretch of the road course now. They built that back in, I believe, 2002 or 2003. They used to just run Sonoma on the drag strip as the front stretch. So more or less we're just widening it out. Odds are the entry into turn 1 is going to get widened out along with it, so it doesn't make for a huge funnel effect into the first two turns. It's not going to be like Richmond where you can go 4 wide and then it funnels down to 2. You're probably going to be able to go 4 wide and then it funnels down to 2.5 or 3. There's going to be runoff to the inside as well, so that it doesn't make for such a scary situation up the hill into turn 2. I wouldn't expect there to be any more runoff added beyond just turns 1 and 2 on the right-hand side because of the widening of the racetrack there. I would actually expect maybe just a little bit of curb widening on 3A so that they don't kick up so much dirt when a car slides wide. And turn 4A. There's currently talk of removing the curb from the middle of the racetrack because drivers don't really utilize it anyway. It used to be track limits. It wasn't enforced. NASCAR never really enforces track limits unless it's just a chicane that if you cut it, you pick up, a good 10 seconds every lap. If you were cutting every chicane at, let's say, the Charlotte Roval or something like that, you probably could pick up a good 5 to 8 seconds. But those are the only things that NASCAR enforces. So those kind of track limit stuff, it's not like F1. They don't really enforce things like jumping over a curb. In fact, that's kind of wanted out of NASCAR, is for you to hop those curbs because it gives them nice promotional shots. But that curb in 4A isn't utilized. It really just disrupts the car, and the drivers are going to slide over it anyway. And it actually ended up having William Byron slap it with the left side of his car, if you don't recall, during the Toyota Save Mart 350. That was just kind of an unnecessary accident. over the tunnel in the chute, he ended up hitting the wall. So that likely is going to be taken out, just the surface smoothed over, so it's a nice and smooth racing surface, much like what we have at Watkins Glen. Even though there's a curb there, that will also be taken out before we go there in August. In fact, I believe it already has been taken out at Watkins Glen because it's not utilized. NASCAR, SMI, all these companies, they're more or less just taking out extraneous curbs and stuff like that, things that aren't utilized whatsoever by the drivers and teams. After 5 really big wrecks at the Sonoma Raceway, Brendan Poole cracking through the concrete wall in the front stretch in the Camping World Truck Series race, Ankrum pirouetting on the wall, getting high-centered, Hawksworth plowing the turn number 2 tire barrier, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. going upside down and slamming the turn 11 barrier, and Kevin Harvick getting dumped on the exit of turn 10. SMI making these decisions to renovate the racetrack before we go there in 2022 is a fantastic move for them, because there was too many red flags for them to not look at making some improvements to the racetrack, because otherwise I'd think NASCAR would be looking the other way, because we had an easy 5 bullets dodged in that race, in those 2 races. 4 just in the Cup Series race alone. That were all more or less freak accidents, with the exception of Harvick's, which was more or less just a dump that was at a very high rate of speed. But we're lucky that no one got injured out of that race and the Camping World Truck Series race. And we're fortunately lucky that SMI is willing to make those maneuvers to bring Sonoma Raceway back up to what I guess you could call a good safety level that NASCAR looks at for all their racetracks. It's kind of amazing to think that all this stuff happened at once that revealed what was wrong at Sonoma, but you know very well how racing works. You don't know there's a problem until it hits you right in the face. And all the problems at Sonoma hit us in the face in the same race. So there's a lot that SMI has to look at, probably some things that they're going to do beyond what were mentioned in the press conference in the morning, but certainly a good move on their part to make those decisions and get the track renovated before we go there next year, and hopefully we can have both a good and safe race in the 2022 season when we go back there with NASCAR's next generation car, and maybe Anthony Alfredo is searching for his second win in a row at Sonoma, just like Larson was. Hopefully he won't have a tire go down there at the end of the race like Larson did. And I also have a bit of an announcement, not really, about another announcement coming. There's a press conference scheduled for next week after the All-Star race. Go Fast Racing, who runs Ryan Ellis in the Cup Series races on the Super Speedways, they will be announcing the driver that they will be fielding in the Food City Dirt Race at the Bristol Motor Speedway, NASCAR's first dirt race in 51 years. And so watch out for the announcement from Frankie Stoddard and all the management of Go Fast Racing after the All-Star race at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. I'm sure it's going to be a big one. From what I've heard so far, it is a veteran of our sport that has not ran a race in at least 7 years. So that will at least get your mind wondering about who it is going to be to drive the number 32, likely Dryden Ford Mustang. And we'll be back in just a minute to give you the race recap from Las Vegas Motor Speedway of the Strat 200 NASCAR Camping World Truck Series race. We'll see you in just a minute. NASCAR on Speed Station is being brought to you by RFJ, the official home of the RFJ AI Series, by Knife Friend 725, the brains behind Project Retroval, and by Anthony's Online Simulation League. Welcome back, and before we get on to the Strat 200 from Las Vegas Motor Speedway, I gotta give you the race analysis. The race took place over the course of 134 laps around the mile-and-a-half speedway in Las Vegas, Nevada, with stage number 1 ending on lap number 30 and stage 2 ending on lap 60. And so now, let's christen this race with our intros. Entering the Truck Series race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, Dawson Cram still sets atop the point standings by 2 points above Ty Gibbs in the number 18 truck. Grant Enfinger sets 15 points out of the lead in third spot. Ty Dillon, 19 points out of the point lead. Austin Terrios, 23 points out. Casey Mears is 27 points out. Christian Eckes is 29 points out. Defending champion Sheldon Creed is 38 points out. Parker Kligman is 39 points back, and Timothy Peters rounds out the top 10, 48 points out of the point lead. Some of the highlights from qualifying include Austin Hill winning the pole in the number 16 truck, a great showing of speed out of Hattori Racing Enterprises. Denny Hamlin qualifying Phoenix Racing's number 5 truck, outside pole in second position, going after the Kyle Busch bounty. Ironically enough, those two ended up wrecking each other out at the end of the Cup Series race at Sonoma, those being Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin. Kind of funny to now have $100,000 be involved in those two's quarrels. Daniel Suarez, another Kyle Busch bounty driver, qualified in 9th. Jordan Anderson, back in his own number 3 truck, qualified in 15th. Chase Elliott qualified Brad Keselowski's number 29 truck in 19th position. Outside him was the number 51 of Kyle Busch, qualifying in 20th position. Quinn Half qualified the number 24 truck for GMS Racing in 24th position. David Gilliland qualified the number 17 truck that he co-owns with Kyle Larson and Johnny Gray in the 30th position. 2012 Series champion James Buescher made his return to the Camping World Truck Series in 2021, driving the number 44 for Nice Motorsports, the same truck he drove last season, and he qualified that 44 truck in the 31st position. And keep in mind, Dawson Cram, who entered the race as the point leader, qualified the 41 truck in 28th position. And the second place runner in points, Ty Gibbs, qualified the 18 truck in 35th, almost at the end of the field. And at the drop of the green flag, the number 16 truck of Austin Hill got a great jump above the number 5 of Denny Hamlin. Hamlin actually got hung out on the restart up on the outside line. You see on his inside, Ty Dillon in the number 31 truck gets around him, as well as the 23 of Brett Holmes, now forcing them 3 wide down into turn number 3. Hamlin forced all the way into the marbles by Ty Majeski in the 55 truck. Hamlin drops all the way down to 5th in just 1 lap. Now a battle for second as the primary Phoenix Racing truck into the top 5. The middle lane proved to be dominant over the course of the Strat 200. There you see Brett Holmes taking up the second position, utilizing that lane. This, however, did make it a little bit difficult to pass once the race started to settle in, because if you did not have a drafting partner from behind, it was very difficult to try and pass someone down on the inside. There you saw Denny Hamlin almost made contact with Ty Majeski as he went down to side draft, but fortunately those two managed to keep it together. The number 11 truck of Spencer Davis was on pit road, had a tire going down. On lap number 4, the 23 truck of Brett Holmes went down to the inside of the 16 of Austin Hill, but Hill used that momentum in the middle lane to clear the number 23 truck. There you see Ty Dillon down to the inside to side draft the 23 of Brett Holmes. That dropped off the 23 truck speed just a little bit more, and Ty Dillon actually took up the second position off the 23 with that move. The caution flag comes out for the first time on lap number 6 as the 46 truck of Chandler Smith blows his engine on the back straightaway. However, racing back to the caution, Parker Kligerman in the number 75 truck pushes up off of turn number 4, makes contact with the 92 of Austin Theriault, sending Theriault spinning around on the front straightaway. Kyle Busch just barely misses it, but right up in front of David Gilliland in the number 17 truck, also taking out Gilliland's son, the number 38 of Todd Gilliland. Those two both involved in the accident, as Stuart Friesen also got turned around, but he managed to keep the 52 truck from getting any damage out of that accident, but severe front-end damage on the number 42 of Carson Hocevar. On lap number 11, after the restart, the number 23 truck of Brett Holmes got down to the inside of the 31 of Ty Dillon. He managed to have drafting help coming from behind from Ty Majeski, and actually retook the second position off the 31. By lap 12, the best Cup Series driver in the field is Daniel Suarez, the defending winner of the Pennzoil 400 after winning that race last season in NASCAR's Cup Series, as Denny Hamlin still dropping back in that number 5 truck. On lap 15, the number 23 truck tried to pull yet another move on the 16 of Austin Hill, but Hill once again just pinched that 23 truck down and could not get around him. Austin Hill still holds the lead at Las Vegas. On lap number 17, the 11 truck of Spencer Davis, very slow up in front of the field, tries to cut into the middle lane, and we get a large crash on the entry to turn 1 as Ty Dillon charges down to the inside, makes contact with the 33 and 53 trucks up into the outside wall, and the 11 and 33 trucks both go over. Ryan Truex slides on his roof. The 11 truck gets turned on top of the 53 of Daniel Suarez. And then the 33 truck gets hit by the 17, spinning like a top on the exit of turn number 2, and finally comes to rest on the exit of turn 2, coming down the back straightaway. Fortunately, no one injured, but a very scary accident through turns 1 and 2. We do not have word on it yet, but there may be disciplinary action taken on the driver, the number 11, for more or less obstructing the entire field and leading to a crash this significant. And there you see the 33 truck getting hit at full speed, and fortunately uninjured, but still a rather scary accident. The number 53 truck of Suarez actually drove out of the accident, but his day was done, as well as the number 97, 33, and 31 trucks. At the end of lap number 19, we had our first set of pit stops. Austin Hill got off pit road in front of Majeski, Parsons, Enfinger, and Hamlin, who picked up quite a few spots in the pits. On the restart, the driver of the 5 truck, Denny Hamlin, showed off his years of experience, going from 5th, then trying to go through the middle of the 55 and 09 trucks, 09 being his teammate, and for a moment taking up the 2nd position in the 5 truck. A great run through the field, but still that number 16 of Austin Hill is just on a rail out front. On lap 24, using momentum off the outside line, the 55 truck of Ty Majeski actually cleared the 5 truck of Denny Hamlin. On lap 28, Austin Hill actually gets boxed in by the lap truck of Ben Rhodes, who is down a cylinder. The number 23 of Brett Holmes drives from 3rd at the start of the lap, then down to the inside of the 16 truck of Austin Hill down the back straightaway. And Brett Holmes finally did it and got around the 16 truck of Austin Hill to take up the race lead as the Phoenix Racing trucks battle for the 2nd position alongside Austin Hill. But then with just 1 lap to go in stage number 1, the 16 truck got down to the inside of the 23 of Brett Holmes. We mentioned all day how hard it was to pass down on the bottom. Guess what? That 16 truck is just that well hooked up. Side by side down the back straightaway on the last lap of stage number 1. Austin Hill gets down to the inside through 3 and 4. Hamlin moves up to push, and Denny Hamlin actually pushes Austin Hill to the stage number 1 victory. Austin Hill winning stage 1 in the Strat 200 above Hamlin, who is currently the best Cup Series runner in the field. Then the 23 of Brett Holmes, the 30 of Brennan Poole, who won the Geico 500. Reverse bushwhacking right there, by the way. And then the 09 of Stephen Parsons, finishing the stage in 5th position. We should also mention that the 18 truck of Ty Gibbs had a mechanical failure there at the end of stage 1, and the 2nd place runner in points entering the race actually dropped out on lap 31. And after the stage number 1 caution, we had a little bit of pit strategy going on with Sheldon Creed coming down pit road, along with Christian Eckes, Ty Majeski, Parker Kligerman, and several others, while Austin Hill, Hamlin, and the rest of the leaders actually stayed out. So this set up a bit of a split in pit strategy, led by, yet again, Jeff Stankiewicz. After the 2 team went to victory lane at Sonoma, they're kind of trying to go off strategy once again and pull off a similar situation here at Las Vegas. The number 41 truck of Dawson Cram, who entered the race as the point leader, actually has a tire puncture under caution. So he will actually have to pit that number 41 truck with the pace car and likely drop at least 1 lap down. On lap number 36, in the early portions of stage number 2, the lap truck of Ben Rhodes blocking the tail end of the field. The 55 truck of Majeski tries to go 4 wide down on the inside. He makes contact with the 26 of Chase Purdy. Then the 55, 51, 45, and 75 trucks all go up into the outside wall. Kyle Busch in the middle of this mess. Ironically enough, Kyle Busch involved in the same accident with Christian Eckes. Those two seem to have been inseparable all year long. But early race damage on the number 51 truck of Kyle Busch. Damage as well on the 12 of Eckes, 55, 75. And the number 99 truck's day gets just a little bit worse through this accident as well, because the only reason that crash likely happened was because that 99 was down on power and now has pretty significant damage. And keep in mind, because Kyle Busch now has damage on that number 51 truck, number 1, he wasn't running good to begin with. That might have just been him trying to lay back like he did at Louisville, but here it sure didn't work out in his favor. But number 2, it's starting to look like that Kyle Busch bounty might be up for grabs. by really any of the Cup drivers in the field if they can get around that extremely quick 16 truck of Austin Hill. And then on lap number 37, most of the race leaders come down pit road, but guess who stays out? It is Sheldon Creed assuming the race lead in the number 2 truck above Matt Crafton, John Hunter Nemechek, and Tanner Gray. Very interesting pit strategy out of GMS Racing. Also keep your eyes on the 44 truck of James Busher, the 2012 Series champion, now running in 5th through pit strategy. Right on the restart, the number 15 truck of Tanner Gray got down to the inside of the 4 of John Hunter Nemechek. That moved the 15 up into 3rd position. He was battling alongside Matt Crafton in the 88, but was pinched down on the bottom and really could not do anything with him. On lap 42, Matt Crafton goes to the inside of the 2 truck of Sheldon Creed, battling for the race lead. Down the front straightaway, side by side, the 4 truck moves up to help the 2. At the stripe, it was actually Crafton to lead the lap. But entering turn number 1, the number 2 truck has help coming from the 4, and they push right by Matt Crafton up on the outside line. Sheldon Creed still your race leader as the 16 truck of Austin Hill slicing and dicing his way through the field on just slightly fresher rubber. On lap 44, the 4 truck of John Hunter Nemechek gets to the inside of Sheldon Creed going for the race lead, but down the front straightaway, Matt Crafton goes through the middle, side drafting the 4 and 2 trucks trying to take that top spot away. The 15 of Tanner Gray gives the 4 truck just a little bit of help entering turn 1, and John Hunter Nemechek takes the race lead. But once Nemechek gets out front, take a look at who is right down on the inside line. That's the 16 of Austin Hill. He will not be denied the race lead in today's event, as that truck just quickly cutting its way through the field. However, he has to watch out for the gaggle of trucks right up in front of him and has to potentially miss getting involved in an accident with the way that they're running up front, as Tanner Gray still going 3 wide on the inside for second. We have more lap traffic right up in front of the race leader. On lap 46, Nemechek catches up to the lap truck of Ben Rhodes, shoots down to the inside, but the outside lines get blocked, with the 16 truck shooting all the way up into 4th position with just a few trucks up in front of him. Ironically enough, the Thor Sport trucks end up blocking each other. And down on the inside, we have Austin Hill trying to push Tanner Gray into 2nd, and he has now done it. Gray running in 2nd position, Nemechek still out front, and now Austin Hill going for the 2nd position. And on lap 48 with a 3 wide pass on the inside, Austin Hill takes up the 2nd spot off of Brennan Poole and Tanner Gray. The number 4 and 16 trucks of Nemechek and Austin Hill battled side by side for about 3 laps for the top spot until the number 16 truck finally cleared him, and Austin Hill retook the race lead out in Las Vegas. On lap 54, Haley Deegan in the number 1 truck for LGR has actually driven her way into 5th position, one of her best runs of the season. Nearing the end of stage number 2, the best Cup Series driver in the field is actually Quinn Half in the number 24 truck for GMS Racing, just barely outrunning the number 29 of Chase Elliott. You can also see the 5 truck of Denny Hamlin behind those 2. On lap 57, the number 16 truck actually ran up on a gaggle of lap trucks, the 75, 38, 92, and the 87, but actually quickly cut his way through them and remained the race leader. And how about this story on the inside line? Jordan Anderson on lap number 59 takes up the 2nd position in the number 3 truck as Austin Hill gets blocked just a little bit by the lap truck of Timothy Peters, but then gets down to the inside and retains the race lead, although it did allow Jordan Anderson to put just a little bit of pressure on that 16 truck, but Hill was able to gap that number 3 truck by a couple of tenths through 3 and 4. As you saw, Jordan Anderson actually got down to the inside of him, but Hill just pinched him down on the bottom, and that 3 truck just had nowhere to go but slide up the racetrack. And at the end of lap number 60, the 16 truck drove around the 55 of Majeski up on the outside line, putting him a lap down, and Austin Hill sweeps both stages in the Strat 200 above the 3 truck of Jordan Anderson, the 4 of John Hunter Nemechek, the 23 of Brett Holmes, and the 1 of Haley Deegan. At the end of stage number 2, we had pit stops once again, which saw Austin Hill get off pit road in first above Jordan Anderson, John Hunter Nemechek, Brett Holmes, and Haley Deegan. Brett Holmes got a fantastically timed restart on the number 4 and 3 trucks of Anderson and Nemechek. Cut down to the bottom, going from 4th to 2nd with an aggressive move on the restart. Then on lap 65, the number 23 truck got down to the inside of the 16 of Austin Hill, going for the race lead, but entering turn number 1, Haley Deegan trying to force him up off the bottom, but still giving that 23 truck a push. And that allows the number 16 of Austin Hill to drive back up on the outside. 23 truck moves up to side draft, but then Deegan pressures them 3 wide on the bottom. 2 rows of 3 wide racing out front as Austin Hill gets pushed up into the marbles. Through the middle lane, the number 23 truck still holds the advantage. The 09 of Stephen Parsons pushing Deegan down on the bottom. But through the middle, Brett Holmes actually takes up the race lead, with the 3 and 16 trucks battling for second position. But the 16 of Austin Hill actually takes up the spot. And it did not take very long for Austin Hill to find his way back out front. Got down to the inside of Brett Holmes on lap number 70, pressuring him down to turn number 1. The 3 truck almost made contact with the 16, but Austin Hill actually moved his way back out front. And let's mention Johnny Sauter, the number 13 truck, getting one of his best runs of the year so far after a pretty terrible season going on for the 13 team, running in the 8th position as Quinn Half forces it 4 wide on the bottom on the exit of turn number 4. Half actually backs out, and it looks like Zane Smith takes advantage of that move. However, this time the number 16 truck's lead was short-lived. The number 3 and 23 trucks actually pushed their way past the number 16 up on the outside line, and Brett Holmes re-cleared the 16 truck of Austin Hill. These two seem to be the class of the field today, with the 16 truck having just a little bit of an advantage above that 23, but Brett Holmes is really able to keep up the fight on the 16. Then down on the inside, Haley Deegan going 3 wide for the 3rd position. Couldn't quite do it, as now Enfinger and Anderson battle for the spot. On lap 73, the number 16 truck tried to get down to the inside, going for the race lead once again, but Brett Holmes actually uses the lap truck of Ben Rhodes as a pick and takes a very large race lead on the exit of turn number 2. And Haley Deegan actually took advantage of the checkup on lap 74, shot it down to the inside, going 3 wide underneath both Enfinger and Austin Hill for the 2nd position. It did not quite work out, as Enfinger actually pinched her down on the inside, but still quite a few aggressive moves out of Haley Deegan over the course of this race, as that team has finally found their way towards the front. On lap 77, that 16 truck once again challenged Brett Holmes for the top spot, but on the exit of turn number 2, that 23 used the momentum off the top and retook that race lead. Denny Hamlin also starting to carve his way through the field, as well as the 24 truck of Quinn Half, who is setting some of the fastest laps of the race at this moment, running in the top 5. Entering lap number 82, the 16 truck of Austin Hill got back down to the inside of Brett Holmes, but this time had a pusher coming from the 98 of Grant Enfinger, and Austin Hill retook the lead off the 23 truck and back out front. On lap 83, the 16 truck gets boxed in by lap trucks. 23 of Brett Holmes thinks he can go to the inside to try and take the race lead. 98 of Enfinger tries to go through the middle, but guess what? Austin Hill finds a hole up on the outside line without lap traffic and uses the very top of the racetrack to retake the race lead, as the 75 truck of Parker Kligerman backs up the inside lane, and Sheldon Creed actually takes up the 2nd position, riding the momentum up on the outside line. And Denny Hamlin, with an incredible 4 wide pass all the way up on the outside line, has finally moved his way up into 4th position in the number 5 truck for Phoenix Racing. And by lap 88, because of lap traffic getting in the way of the leaders, the 51 truck of Kyle Busch had actually raced his way all the way into 14th position. So maybe his defense of the Kyle Busch bounty might not be over. You know, Austin Hill was really showing something about long run speed over the course of the race at Las Vegas. That 16 truck, if you just look at 1 lap speed, was only the 27th fastest truck on track. However, that 16 truck has run very, very consistent lap times, and over the course of a run does not drop off by very much. So it's not necessarily about how fast you are once. It's about how consistent you are over the course of a 134-lap event. And that is what has led to the number 16 truck being dominant over the course of the race, as there you see on the inside, Quinn Half to the bottom of his fellow Cup Series full-timer, Denny Hamlin. 24 and 5 trucks side by side for the 4th position. On lap number 94, the 24 truck of Quinn Half uses the outside lane to get around the 5 of Denny Hamlin and takes up the 4th position. And this 24 truck really starting to carve its way through the field. On the outside line of Grant Enfinger, Half takes up the 3rd position, as your defending champion still resides in the 2nd spot, that being his teammate at GMS Racing. But on lap number 99, the 24 truck gets down to the inside of the 2 of Sheldon Creed, and Quinn Half takes up the 2nd position, going after that $100,000 Kyle Busch bounty. Currently the best NASCAR Cup Series driver in the field, and also the best GMS Racing truck after getting around Sheldon Creed. On lap number 105, Sheldon Creed comes down pit road, another aggressive pit strategy move by that organization, trying to short pit the field in the final stage and end up scoring massive amounts of track position if we do not get a caution. On lap number 108, the 98 truck of Grant Enfinger took the 2nd position off the 24 of Quinn Half, as Half now being pressured by the 3 of Jordan Anderson. But it did not take Half very long to find his way back up into 2nd position, getting to the inside of Enfinger on lap 109. Half back to 2nd. And look at who has driven his way right back through the field after having trouble with lap traffic over the course of this final stage. It's the 23 truck of Brett Holmes back into 3rd spot. The lap truck of Chase Purdy actually got down to the inside of the 16 of Austin Hill, forcibly putting himself back onto the lead lap. And for a moment, the 16 truck bobbled on the exit of turn number 4, letting the 24 truck catch up just a little bit. Then the GMS teammates of Half and Holmes battled each other side by side, stabilizing the gap out to the race leader. Entering turn number 1 on lap 119, the 55 truck does not anticipate how much the 15 is slowing down for the corner, makes contact with the left side of the 15 of Tanner Gray. Gray, Peters, both go up into the outside wall with the 55 truck. Then Christian Eckes gets involved in it. The 87 truck of Peters gets on 2 wheels, sets back down onto the racetrack, but this has now brought out our most recent caution as the 15 and 87 trucks go around. And here's the onboard with Kyle Busch. And just manages not to get clipped by that 12 truck. And they really did try and clog the entire racetrack as they were spinning, going 5 wide, including the 52 truck of Stuart Friesen down on their inside. I mean, just look at how many trucks they tried to shove into a very, very small hole. 51 truck was just lucky that he wasn't closer to the accident. On lap 121, the leaders come down pit road for what should be their final stop of the day. Austin Hill gets off pit road in 1st position above the 24 of Quinn Half, the 98 of Grant Enfinger, the 3 of Jordan Anderson, and the 88 of Matt Crafton. Keep in mind that we had quite a few lap trucks opt to stay out because they just came down pit road, those being Purdy, Kligerman, Majeski, Moffitt, Eckes, Austin Wayne Self, and Sheldon Creed. So Austin Hill really has to be on his toes on this final restart with that many slow trucks up in front of him. On the restart, Hill jumps up to the outside line to get around the 75 and 55 trucks as quick as possible. Inside line gets blocked by the 55, and the 16 cuts down to the inside of the 26 of Chase Purdy, cutting his way through the lap traffic pretty much as quick as he possibly could have. On lap number 125, the 40 truck of Will Rogers gets blocked by the 55, the slow truck of Ty Majeski. Brendan Poole makes contact with the 40 of Will Rogers, sending him around on the front straightaway, sliding out of control back up in front of the field. There's the number 92 of Austin Theriault, who, if you recall, was involved in a pretty serious crash here many years ago, driving for Brad Keselowski. Makes heavy contact with the 40, jumps that 92 truck into the air, up into the outside wall, still running through the air, and that 92 truck knocked out of the race, as well as the 40 of Will Rogers. Also involved in the crash was the number 99 of Ben Rhodes, trying to check up for the 38 truck of Todd Gilliland, accidentally makes contact with him, and also drops out of the race. And while this time at least he was uninjured, this was a very strange reminder of Austin Theriault's former crash at this very facility. Under caution on lap 129, the number 22 truck of Austin Wayne Self suffers an engine failure and has to drop out of the race. And so on this restart, the 16 truck of Austin Hill has one lap truck separating himself from second position, that being the 2 truck of Sheldon Creed, who is actually the teammate to Quinn Half, who resides in second position. Half going after a $100,000 bonus, but Austin Hill trying to score a playoff spot and trying to get his team back on track in the 2021 season. On the restart, the 24 of Quinn Half got down to the inside of the 2 truck of Sheldon Creed with a clear shot on the number 16 of Austin Hill. However, the biggest issue for Half is that Hill has clean air, and Half obviously does not. Half was able to close the gap down to just about a truck length on the 16, but then the 88 of Matt Crafton shot down to the inside, and that was exactly what Austin Hill wanted to see behind him, was those two battling for the second position, with now the white flag waving at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Matt Crafton taking up second position with a push coming from Brett Holmes in the number 23. Also, Casey Mears has finally raced his way towards the front, resides in sixth position in that number 60 truck. Brett Holmes down to the inside, try and make it work for second, but back down to the start-finish line. Austin Hill in absolutely dominating fashion, leading 106 out of 134 laps, winning the pole, both stages, and now winning the race. Austin Hill wins the Strat 200 from Las Vegas Motor Speedway, clinching a playoff spot for Hattori Racing Enterprises after a very rough start to the 2021 season, after their organization expanded out to NASCAR's Cup level. Now back into victory lane with a shot at the Camping World Truck Series title, starting at Darlington. After Dawson Cram and Ty Gibbs both had quite a few issues over the course of the Strat 200, Grant Enfinger moves from third in points all the way up to the top spot by 2 points above Dawson Cram, who's dropped down to second in the standings. Casey Mears moves up to third in the point standings, 11 points out of the lead, with Ty Gibbs dropping down 2 spots in the standings, down to fourth, 15 points out. Christian Eckes moves up 2 spots in the standings to fifth, 32 points out. Also 32 points out is Austin Terrio, who drops down to sixth in the standings. 33 points out of the lead is Ty Dillon, who drops down 3 spots after the race at Las Vegas. Sheldon Creed stays 8th in points, 36 points back. Parker Kligerman stays 9th in points, 45 points back. And Matt Crafton, after winning at Dover earlier in the season and stealing second at Las Vegas, moves up 5 spots in the point standings, 52 points out of the lead, running in 10th in the standings. In your playoff standings following Las Vegas, Grant Enfinger, being the point leader without a win, has an automatic playoff berth if he can stay at the top of the heap. Then Casey Mears, Ty Gibbs, Christian Eckes, Sheldon Creed, Matt Crafton, Ryan Truex, and Austin Hill are all locked in with their wins now. Kyle Busch is listed as locked in with his win, but that is not mathematically possible because he is a Cup Series competitor. Declared for Cup Series points, he is limited to only 5 races a year, so he will not be competing for a championship. However, this does list his win that he scored at Las Vegas, and after scoring a relatively decent finish at Las Vegas, he is within the top 30 in the standings. If he switched to NASCAR Camping World Truck Series points for some reason, he would be eligible for the playoffs if he could win yet another race, but that is not going to happen. Then the best of the rest, Dawson Cram, 65 points above the cutoff line. Austin Terrio, 35 points above. Ty Dillon, 34. Kligerman, 22. Peters, 15. Majeski, 6. Ben Rhodes, only 1 point above that cut line. Brett Holmes, 1 point out. Also Tanner Gray, 1 point out. Chase Purdy is 16 points back, and John Hunter Nemechek is 16 points out of making the playoffs. And now, after just a quick commercial break, we'll be back right here on Post Tech going over my personal favorite segment of the show, Q&A. NASCAR on Speed Station is being brought to you by RFJ, the official home of the RFJ AI series. By Knife Friend 725, the brains behind Project Retroval. And by Anthony's Online Simulation League. Hello everyone, welcome back to Post Tech. We're now on to the Q&A segment where we answer questions sent in by fans just like you. And now, Alrighty, let's just dive into it. And I apologize if I say any names or handles incorrectly, but it's bound to happen. From Jackson Nantle, is there any chance we could see some open-wheel drivers in NASCAR? For example, maybe Pietro Fittipaldi running for Rick Ware at Indy. We could probably see a couple ringers, I guess you could call them, show up for the Brickyard 400. We currently don't know who they may be. Last year, you recall Juan Pablo Montoya running for Team Penske. That would not happen this year because those two separated. And Sam Hornish Jr. running for A.J. Foyt in a one-off. They also had Bourdais run at the Roval. That was a rather interesting situation. But that organization does not plan on running really any more races. A.J. Foyt Enterprise, as the field got really competitive this year. So I wouldn't expect those organizations to show up anytime soon. But there is the distinct possibility that we could see a couple open-wheel ringers show up. We already know that Roger Penske is going to give Joseph Newgarden the fall Bristol race if Joseph can pull off an Indy 500 win. That's the only confirmed one if it does in fact happen. Outside of that, Scott McLaughlin might run another race or two for Team Penske after his great performance at Circuit of the Americas. But beyond that, really uncertain at the moment. We'll have to see once we get closer to the Independence Day running of the Brickyard 400. And now, question number 2 from Colin McCoy. With Poole breaking the concrete wall at Sonoma, has NASCAR looked into possibly doing adjustments or changes to the walls at the road course? Certainly. As I mentioned in the earlier portion of today's show, SMI already had a full press conference about this. Everything, pretty much, relating to the walls at Sonoma Raceway is going to be changed by next season's running of the Toyota Save Mart 350. It's probably going to get a couple other road course owners thinking about what they need to change when the Cup Series cars show up there later in the year, such as Road America. If anything there might be a bit of a concern. That track's a little too wide, in my opinion, for there to be a problem, but I didn't think there was going to be any sorts of these types of issues at Sonoma. So maybe the walls up the S's at Watkins Glen need to be pushed back or something like that. Who really knows? Because it seems like we don't know that there's a problem until somebody really shows it to us by hitting or going through a wall or something like that, flipping like Stenhouse did. You don't really know there's a problem until it hits you in the face, and that's what happened to SMI. But I'm sure that pretty much all the road course owners right now are looking at what they need to do with their track's construction to make sure that they can hold safe Cup Series races, and Sonoma is certainly going to be changing a lot about their racetrack next year as we progress into the future as well, because I'm sure that not every problem is going to get resolved with just the updates that they're going to make for next season. More stuff is probably likely going to have to be done, but it is going to be a good start for Sonoma Raceway, hopefully getting the safety back at that racetrack, at least to the degree that we used to think it was, even knowing that there was nothing different. There was nothing changed, it's just that it finally hit us that it wasn't safe. We were just lucky enough that nobody was running off track and hitting those particular walls. It made the racetrack look really safe, but guess what? It sure wasn't. I mean, name any other driver who hit the inside wall on the front straightaway as hard as Brendan Poole did, and as straight of an angle to go through it. I can't name a single person who has hit the wall as hard as Brendan Poole did. It's just the angle that he hit it, and it just so happened to be that race. So you don't really know until it happens, but fortunately, NASCAR, SMI, all the road course owners are definitely having their eyes wide open after these few problems have showed themselves at the Sonoma Raceway. Now on to question number 3 from Todoraki. With the drama at Stewart-Haas Racing, is any other teams experiencing this situation? Not to the same degree, because Stewart-Haas Racing is kind of in like an internal melt at this point. As we speak, looks like Stewart likely will move to GM next year with probably Evernham. Just the separation right now isn't looking very good. It's also likely going to keep Tony Stewart out of driving the 78 car, which was an initial plan for him to run for Live Fast Motorsports at the Bristol Dirt Race. It looks like that might not happen now, which is a little bit unfortunate, but I'm sure that organization is going to be looking for a driver that they can hire because they're Stewart-Haas aligned, and it looks like they're more Haas aligned than Stewart. So I wouldn't expect a Schatz or a Stewart to be running the 78 car at Bristol. The other teams are experiencing a similar situation would be just a little bit of the infighting at Joe Gibbs Racing. It's not like a total split situation going on like we're seeing at Stewart-Haas, which is affecting every single member of the team. But Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin, as I've mentioned, are still frustrated with each other after they've gotten into each other more than once this year. But that is just driver to driver frustration. It's not the whole team looking like it's going to melt before the end of the season. Now, question number 4 from Switchblade. With Tony Stewart fielding a truck team later this season, has Stewart reached out to any veteran drivers like Casey Kane, who was offered a ride at Stewart-Haas Racing in 2019 but turned it down, or any other veterans? So Casey Kane would be actually a very interesting decision for them to make, because like you mentioned, they did want to hire Casey Kane back in 2019 to drive the 41 car. That actually would have had a lot of ramifications, because that would have led to us not hiring Daniel Suarez, most likely, because he probably wouldn't have gotten the opportunity to prove that he could win in the Cup Series, which is what led to him getting the 000 car. So that would have changed a lot right there. But anyway, I digress. Tony Stewart is looking to just field Sam Mayer for the close of the year once they get this operation set up at TSR. However, next year, that might open up the opportunity to try and put someone like Casey Kane into their truck. Not too many rumors of who they might want outside of, just Mayer for the close of the year, because that's been kind of stealing all the headlines. Just the fact that they're looking at this whole merger and stuff, the split between Stewart and Haas, it's kind of taking up all the storylines pertaining to the Truck Series team. It's more just that there is a truck team, not who's going to drive it, more or less. But I would say expect quite a few veterans in it next year once they get the development plan with Sam Mayer worked out, and running a few races in the Camping World Truck Series once Mayer turns 18 later in the year, and running the Speedways with what would likely be the number 14 truck. But I like the idea for Casey Kane running there, and they might need to think about that next season. Maybe get a 2-truck program going on with Schatz and Kane running potentially dirt races. Who knows? There might be something for them to think about. It'd perform good, at least at those racetracks. From NASCAR fan 88 official, could any F1, IMSA, or IndyCar drivers make a one-off start at any road courses this season or next season, and what team would they for in the one-off? So right now, not very many one-off drivers rumored, because, the field is so stacked as it is. It's kind of getting harder and harder to make your way into NASCAR's top level. Really in any NASCAR division right now, just because of how stacked, especially the Truck Series and Cup Series fields are. But in particular, I would be looking at IMSA for the drivers that could run a road course race. IndyCar, the schedule doesn't exactly work out like you would want it. F1 drivers really aren't in the United States too often, or in North America as often as you would need to be to really be committed to running a race in one of NASCAR's divisions. They only run a couple races on this continent, most of the time elsewhere. But IMSA, Kevin Magnussen's been rumored to potentially run a race going off the success of his father in the number 33 car. Kevin would actually be driving a car for Chip Ganassi Racing, because that's who he drives for in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Series for Chip Ganassi Racing. So that would likely lead to a partnership to run Kevin Magnussen in one of Chip's cars, because that's a rival team to ours. So he would not be in another car that we own, because number one, we have 4 full-time spots, so it's not like we could open up one anyway. But, contract obligations, stuff like that, different team affiliations just wouldn't work out, even if we did have an open car. But I would say keep your eyes on Kevin Magnussen. Not too many drivers outside of that would really be interested because of how stacked the field is. Kind of getting harder and harder to be someone with no stock car experience and make your way to the top level. Because, we had, for instance, 64 cars show up at Daytona. If you have really no experience in a stock car whatsoever, even at a road course which would have quite a few less cars show up than the Daytona 500, it would still be kind of a big risk for a team owner, and one that I don't think that they would be too willing to take anymore after how competitive the field has gotten. Also from NASCAR fan 88 official, we have 2 more questions. Since Tony Stewart is opening up a truck team in 2022 or even 2023, could he expand to 2 or 3 truck teams? And if he does, who do you think he would bring in to drive the second or third truck? So like I said, I like the concept of Casey Kane running there. I think that would be a rather natural fit. Donnie Schatz, if they could get him to maybe run less sprint car races, which would be a little crazy, to be honest with you, but it's happened before. Steve Kinser took a break from World of Outlaws back in '95 when he thought he would get a good deal with Kenny Bernstein and Winston Cup. That plan completely backfired within a couple months, but he was committed to it. So potentially Stewart, with enough convincing, could get Donnie Schatz to try and come over and pursue a successful asphalt career for at least a couple seasons. I doubt it, but it could happen, and it would be one of their most logical decisions. Beyond that, not too many drivers who could potentially drive it. I believe that they would want probably one full-time driver who I'm not sure that would be. They would probably go after maybe even Parker Kligerman if Henderson Motorsports can't field him in another full season if things start to fall apart. But also, their second truck would probably be a part-time deal for someone like Kane, Schatz to run a couple races, Sam Mayer, stuff like that, because Mayer's going to be going to the Xfinity Series. He already has that deal signed with JRM. He's going to run the latter half of the year in the 8 car, while he runs the latter half of the season in the 14 truck for Tony Stewart. So kind of an interesting situation there, but I don't think that they would want to run 2 to 3 full-time teams. Like I said, I think it would be maybe run all the races, but not have 2 to 3 full-time drivers. They would have probably 1 full-time driver in a roster of probably like 4 or so, and I guess we'd call an all-star truck. Something like that situation going on instead of a full-on, multi-truck, full-time program for Tony Stewart Racing. Also from NASCAR Fan 88 Official, we have, has there been any throwback schemes released for any up-and-coming races? Right now, no more throwback paint schemes have been announced as of yet. Expect that stuff to come out probably once we get towards the summer, because North Wilkesboro is a fall race, so right now we don't have any throwback paint schemes announced. Not for any up-and-coming races either, because, we're so far away from any throwback races. The Landon Castle Marty Robbins Special, that was just a one-race deal because we were in Nashville. But no more throwback paint schemes, at least for a while, have been announced. I would expect those to start coming within the next 2 to 4 months before we get later in the year, closer to the playoffs, once we start to really think about North Wilkesboro Speedway and that race down there. Now, question number 7 from RFJ. Could we see more international tracks in North America join the schedule, such as, Canada, Mexico, etc.? So NASCAR's been looking into getting Canadian Tire Motorsports Park onto the schedule for probably a good 2 seasons. It looks like that track is probably the closest to be on to the Cup Series schedule. Mexico, they would likely go with what they used to go with, Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, which is a really good racetrack. The one that, NASCAR's Peak Mexico Series runs at. Quite a few other series, F1's ran there. Montreal would be an interesting situation up in Canada. I kind of doubt it happening, because of all the F1 stuff going on with, the Montreal race up there, the Canadian GP. It kind of pays for itself, just that race being ran. I'm not sure if they would really want the Cup Series to run there. I mean, I'm sure that you would want it, but I'm not sure if NASCAR wants it, if you know what I mean. They might be feeling like if they go there, they would be playing second fiddle to F1, which I don't think they want to do in this continent in particular. So Canada, I would say Canadian Tire Motorsports Park is what I would look out for on the NASCAR Cup Series side. I've talked before about Toronto potentially being added to the schedule. That's because that could get a street course, a race in Canada, and an IndyCar doubleheader out all at the same time. So it would be kind of a perfect situation for marketing if NASCAR would want to go in that direction and race north of the border. From Switchblade, with NASCAR's renewed interest in short-track racing and the lack of top 3 series racing in the Pacific Northwest, could Evergreen return to the truck schedule in the future? That would be a very interesting situation, because that racetrack always put on pretty good shows. The only issue was we always used to get a lot of rain at that racetrack, and that was before we had jet dryers. So if you don't recall what they used to do at most short tracks and what they still do at certain short tracks, ones that don't, not NASCAR paid ones that don't have, $80 billion to throw around, you take a big tractor tire and you actually tow it around the racetrack on your truck, and you try and dry out the track that way, and then you'd have certain cars, rental cars and stuff run around. In a lot of cases at short track racing, it's not rental cars, it's just the cars that the people who work the track own, and that was how they had to dry the track for the Camping World Truck Series back then, because it would rain fairly consistently up there. But it was a really good racetrack, and I'd kind of like to see it come back, because NASCAR is slacking on their Pacific Northwest market. They are absolutely not taking advantage of racing fans up that side of the country. So I would like to see a race like that happen some point in the future, because the race at Louisville really opened a lot of fans' eyes about the qualities of short track racing that I've been preaching about for years. That, I really feel like in this country, in particular, just the way that people have been raised to, learn about racing from local racing, stuff like that. Because, your first experience should probably be with local racing rather than with like a big NASCAR type deal. At least I think that helps you out a little bit better to understand the low budget side of it before you get into the throwing around millions of dollars side. but it really opened up people's eyes to what short track racing has to offer for NASCAR's top levels. So I would like to see a race at Evergreen at some point in the future. I think it's viable, something that could happen, and it's certainly a market that NASCAR needs to tap into once again, because, you know, the Truck Series might have been just a mostly Western series back then because it was founded out on the West Coast, but that's no excuse to not run there, is that was just a Western series, you know, at the time. It obviously moved east as the series progressed, but we kind of need to be covering everything at the moment, and I think that we're losing quite a bit of an audience that just can't show up to races because it's too far away. You know, imagine you live up in the Pacific Northwest and your closest racetrack is Phoenix Raceway. That's not a drive you really want to make. You know, it's pretty far, so NASCAR probably should expand into that market as they probably should have been years ago. Now, from Todoroki, is NASCAR interested in going on snow for racing? After seeing that Euro NASCAR clip, I'm very hooked in this becoming a reality. I'll tell you what, that was very interesting video from that Wheel and Euro team. It is an idea I want to see explored. I'm not quite sure where you would be able to do it in this country. You know, we don't quite have the same level of setup, nearly permanent racetracks high up in the mountains or in high elevation areas that can stay snow-covered for quite a while. But I would absolutely love to see something like that happen. I mean, being from Ohio, we have dirt racing all the time, but we also get a lot of snow in the winter that makes you wonder, you know, why can't we run on that too? You know, that's always been one thought that I had, is that, you know, we have this long off season through the winter, especially here. It's not like down south where you can still get a lot of racing in. Always wondered how we could get racing back in the middle of the winter. Well, snow racing's a pretty darn good answer. I'll say that. I mean, you couldn't quite do it at an asphalt track. You know, it's not like if it snowed over Pocono, you could run that too easily because it would just burn off and turn into a weird, you know, water mess on the racetrack. But if you ran a dirt track in the snow, that would make for a pretty interesting situation, because if it was heavy enough snow, I would think it would compact down. So, you know, you could possibly run a dirt track in the snow instead of having to run like a rally circuit like what was ran in France with that Wheel and Euro test. But I would enjoy to see a race on snow. I definitely wonder how it could be done, but I would be 100% in on something like that going on. I would love to see it. It'd be very interesting. You know, you want to talk about dirt racing being a new aspect. Well, I don't think we've ever raced on a snow or ice type surface. You know, even back in the, you know, Wild West of NASCAR, I guess you could say, back in 49 to probably 55, when people were just trying to figure out what is NASCAR. You know, even the promoters themselves and Bill France, back then we didn't race in the snow either. But back then it was primarily a Southern racing series, but still, I think we probably do need to get a snow race or something like that in at some point. Like I said, not sure where you could do it. Probably somewhere high elevation. I don't think they'd really want to run a dirt race like, you know, January, middle of January, when it's really starting to get bad up north. I don't really think I could see that happening. It's really good for sprint cars on ice. I'm sure you know that series. They run, well, exactly what it sounds like, sprint cars on frozen over lakes and ponds, which they put on great shows because sprint cars really anywhere are good. But I'm very curious as to how NASCAR could pull something like this off, because it's something I think a lot of fans would want to see. From RFJ, could we see Atlanta and Texas, two SMI tracks by the way, revert back to their original configurations? So Atlanta, I feel like that can't happen because they just got done with repaving the racetrack for the championship race there in 2020. I don't think they would want to go through all the work of repaving the whole racetrack just to revert it back to a totally different layout where they'd have to redo all the grandstands, redo the entire racetrack again. And when you think about it, it's a lot of cost, you know, to completely swap a racetrack over from one way to the other after you more or less had to demolish half the track to get it the way it is right now. It'd more or less just be kind of wasting your time to demolish what you built to rebuild what was there that you demolished. You know what I mean? It, even knowing that people say that Atlanta's original layout was better, I don't know about you, but Atlanta's current layout's put on some pretty good shows.
They come toward the line. Who will it be? It is going to be... I don't know. I don't either.
He's going to get him, though. He's going to get him.
Gordon got loose. It's Harvick. Harvick.
Here and here comes Johnny Benson. Benson's going to slide out of fourth. Sprague's going to slide out of fourth, and Kyle Busch is going to win this race.
The only problem is recently, before they repaved it in 2020, the surface was getting so old that it really couldn't be ran at a proper speed. Now, ever since the repave, it's been returned to kind of what it was back in like 98 when they first did the surface. It's a lot of on-throttle time, but still enough to where you can race each other fairly well. We still have the high downforce package, but I don't know about you. Last year's championship race was phenomenal. Well, that's probably just because it had all the intensity of a championship race, drivers taking risks that they normally wouldn't. You know, if the Cup Series championship race at Atlanta was just moved to, say July, if it was just like a middle of the summer race, it had nothing to do with the playoffs or the championship, it probably would have turned into a semi-boring race. But because it had all that intensity, all that aggression out of the drivers trying to get their way to the front, it turned the thing into a great show. And I expect the same thing this November when we go back there. Texas, however, it might need to revert back to its original configuration, even knowing that it has, been reconfigured about, 5 or so years ago now, 2017. They really kind of did mess that track up, didn't they? Turns 1 and 2 did not need to really be flattened for stock cars. Now, for Indy cars, it made sense from a safety concern standpoint. It did not make the racing better at all in either series. However, it really makes you wonder if Texas Motor Speedway would be willing to do that. Turns 1 and 2, like I said, they probably need to be brought back to what they originally were just to make the track balanced and make it drivable again by really any series. But I kind of doubt the budget being there to convince them to do that, because now SMI has to spend all their time working on Sonoma, because that track definitely proved some major safety issues that they need to get fixed. Not to mention that, but they're also doing the Bristol Dirt Race. They have a lot to manage there by putting the dirt down, which they already have done. But then once they get that done, they have to take the dirt back up. And so there's a lot of stuff that SMI is going to be spending on that I'm not quite sure if they can make any room for getting Texas back to the way it probably should be. I share your opinion on the fact that Texas should be reconfigured. Atlanta, however, I feel like it has put on good enough shows and great racing. In fact, I personally feel like it's better. But that's just because competition's gotten so much closer since the original Atlanta layout. Best Atlanta race on the original layout was the 92 Hooters 500. Again, that was probably only good because of championship implications. If that race would have been held in the middle of July, it would have probably just sucked. But because it was such a battle for the title, it turned to a good race. It's just kind of how things work sometimes. If Texas was the championship race right now, it might be a little bit more entertaining too, or it might just drag the championship race down with it. But Texas probably does need a reconfiguration, but I really don't know if it's in the budget. I'd like to see it. We all know that they have to do some work at Texas anyway, paving that infield grass, because we had a huge pileup once again because the drivers, if you go into the grass, you rip your splitter off. Your race is probably over. But if you try and navigate your way through the wreck, you might have a chance better than running through the dirt, but then you end up piling into the wreck, and that's what happened in the O'Reilly Auto Parts 500. So since SMI will have to work on Texas a little bit, I'd like to see them fix turns 1 and 2, but we'll just have to wait and see if they really will fix that, because I think it would probably bring the racing back to what it was there. But, for some reason, Texas just got a lot worse after its reconfiguration. I personally feel like Atlanta either stayed the same or got a little better after it was reconfigured to the 1.54-mile layout. But Texas just got far worse. They certainly need to do something at that racetrack. Even though they put on pretty good races over the last couple of years, 2021's race earlier in the season kind of proved some major flaws with that racetrack, and that might give SMI the incentive to work on that track just a little bit. From NASCAR Awesome Squid 24, could we possibly see NASCAR's return to Riverside International Raceway as a one-off race? You know what, as much as I love Riverside, as great of a racetrack as it was back in the day, it put on some pretty decent races. It wasn't like how, the modern day road course racing is neck and neck down to the end. Back then, they ran full races without stages. People could get away with the lead. People would just drive away with it. The races could kind of turn boring, but fortunately back then they didn't broadcast full races. They just had highlights, which made every race look good. However, let me show you this map of the Riverside International Raceway compared to the current Riverside, California City. So the only problem with trying to return a race to Riverside is that it would be dead in the center of the city. But, in a way, that would actually be a good thing, because then NASCAR could get their coveted street circuit race that they've been looking for so many years. So I could see some possibilities there if NASCAR really wants to get a race back at Riverside, of trying to set up a race in the middle of the city, which would be very ironic because the racetrack was shut down mainly due to noise complaints from people who lived near the Speedway. So imagine now the Speedway is where your house is. That would kind of be a very fitting conclusion for Riverside International Raceway's history, that it gets put out of business by noise complaints, but then the racetrack's just right where the buildings are, making as much noise as possible. I'd kind of like to see that just out of spite. But it would be definitely a hard thing to get going, but I would absolutely love to see Riverside back on the schedule. I still have faith that it can happen. It might be a totally different racetrack layout, but it would be on the grounds where Riverside International Raceway used to be. But I'll say this, if NASCAR can get this figured out with local area management, a race at Riverside International Raceway would certainly be something I would be very much interested in. And it would be probably a great show for gearheads such as myself. Maybe the people in the area would hate it, but certainly the sponsors would probably love it. It'd be big-time exposure, NASCAR on a street circuit, NASCAR back at Riverside. It'd be a very fitting conclusion for our sports history at that racetrack. And now, from NASCAR Fan 88 Official, could Road Atlanta be on the NASCAR schedule in the next 3 seasons? You know what, that's a really good racetrack. They hold the Petit Le Mans there yearly in IMSA's WeatherTech Sports Car Series. Road Atlanta is a very good racetrack. Winston Cup teams back in that era used to use it for open testing, back when you could more or less test at any racetrack that you wanted to. They used to go up to Road Atlanta, test their cars for the road courses, and because you would only build 1 or 2 road course cars a year, you could really test it anywhere. Road Atlanta, VIR, everybody used to use those road courses as test facilities, even knowing that they weren't on NASCAR's Cup Series schedule at the time. They were still, driven on by countless amount of Cup Series teams for the purpose of testing their road cars. So Road Atlanta would actually be a very interesting track to see on the schedule. I would like to see it because of, the connections with IMSA. IMSA is owned by Jim France. We know Jim France, CEO of NASCAR. It'd be an easy thing to get going, and Road Atlanta is a very fine racetrack for it to happen. So I'd be a personal fan of it happening. It would likely replace another road course, because NASCAR wants there to be 8 to 9 road courses a year, no more than that, mainly, in my opinion, because of how much they want more short track races. They don't want to undermine the short tracks by having too many road courses. But Road Atlanta is definitely a good track to consider for NASCAR's future foray into more road course racing. And now, from Todoroki, is there any new tracks being built for NASCAR, and are those tracks interesting NASCAR? So right now, there's really no new racetracks being built. At the moment, we're mostly looking at old racetracks being renovated. Racetracks right now that aren't even old, just current racetracks being renovated. When it comes to new tracks, Riverside, I mean, if we really get this street circuit thing going, that would certainly be a new racetrack. There's the whole Miami street circuit thing going on with F1. That might be a bit of an interesting situation there. But no true purpose-built actual racetrack is being built at this current time as we speak. There's no NASCAR level big money racetrack being built anytime soon that I would expect, unless you count those street circuits like I mentioned, which still have to be constructed for motorsports competition like I mentioned. But still, it's a little bit of a different situation. So right now, I would say no real racetracks being built at the moment, but still keep your eyes out for any new ones if any new announcements do in fact come out. From RFJ, how big could silly season be this offseason? Probably very big, because, we have 2311 looking to expand. We have Stewart-Haas trying to split. That's probably the biggest story. Drivers in between these sorts of situations. All the JTG drivers are unknown for next year. Where is Martin Truex Jr. going at the end of the year? He still has not re-signed with Joe Gibbs Racing for next season. He is still a free agent for 2022, which is going to be a big deal. Ryan Newman could potentially retire at the year's end. Kurt Busch is being rumored to do the same. There's a lot that is going to be different about next season when we roll into Daytona in February. Right now, we really don't know, but there's a lot of speculation about who might be going where, who who could be doing what next year. Eric Almirola almost certainly is going to be leaving Stewart-Haas Racing at the end of the year. He might go to Roush if Newman retires. A lot of stuff going on, and I would say it's going to be a big, silly season as we progress through the year. Who knows? Anthony Alfredo's win at Sonoma might even propel him forward in his Cup Series career. Right now, there's a bit too many factors to really even know who's going where for next season. From Numi Boy, with the formation of a new European Super League in soccer/football, will clubs within the brand new ESL begin aiming at sponsorship opportunities in NASCAR as a tool to gain larger fan base in the United States? So, first of all, I got to mention that, I don't know much about stick and ball sports in general, much less European soccer or football there. However, I do have to mention, this sounds like more destructive than the kart IRL split for there. Obviously, I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't know much about the situation, but from what I've simply heard, it's not even a 25/8 rule going in. There's just people getting flat out banned for participating in the Super League. So it's looking remarkable from a perspective of just melting over there. But if the European Super League is interested in building a big fan base in the United States, sponsorship opportunities in NASCAR would be a very interesting prospect. It would be a pretty smart decision by the ESL to use NASCAR as a tool to build a better fan base in the U.S., especially, say, for a person like me who knows almost nothing about European soccer or football, however you want to call it. It would be a way of getting someone like myself to at least pay attention to it a little bit because they're sponsoring Michael McDowell, something like that, just the name alone would get me to research it if I knew absolutely nothing about it. We live in the information age. Researching things is nowhere near as hard as it used to be. If you don't know what a company is, you can just look it up. Who knows? You might even become a fan of it. So it'd be a very smart decision on their part if they want to use, some sponsorship outlets through NASCAR to try and build a much larger fan base. And going off with the severity of this split between them and I believe FIFA and a few other organizations, this would be a good way of trying to build themselves up as a company that has split off from another sport. Because I know very well from the kart IRL split that more or less kart and IRL were trying to reel in F1 and NASCAR fans to kind of prop themselves up, which is why they kind of took after each other's series. Kart kind of tried to go the F1 route, kind of just looks like a copycat once you get to the 2007 season. IRL tried to just become a NASCAR ticket package, which is what they did end up doing with primarily oval racing. They were running less road courses than NASCAR was at a certain point. In fact, for several years they were. But the European Super League, stuff like that might start happening. For all I know, if they really want to, they might start applying American Football League rules into it if they want to score an even bigger fan base. But starting at just NASCAR and not doing something so crazy as doing that would be a smart decision to build your fan base up and prop it up as a brand new league. Now from Switchblade, with Formula One announcing Miami for 2022 and COTA's future as a Formula One track in jeopardy, coupled with financial problems the current ownership is having, is Speedway Motorsports or International Speedway Corporation looking at buying the circuit? And if they do, will they make alterations to add facilities and or alter the layout to be more conducive for NASCAR? So SMI is managing the track for this year. They already did that for the Echo Park, Texas GP. Kind of weird to say GP when it comes to a stock car race. But then again, back in Iowa, Des Moines, there was the Rouen Grand Prix, which was an ARCA Menard Series race. So this stuff has happened beforehand. But back on topic, Circuit of the Americas would likely go to SMI if anyone were to buy it out. And maybe that would be a way for Speedway Motorsports to maybe get some more road course racing going on. Because even knowing that they're going to put a lot into Sonoma to renovate it, if that stuff does not work out, it would be a good fallback plan to utilize COTA as a future road course track if Sonoma unfortunately drops off the schedule, which I don't see happening, but it would make for a good backup in case it does in fact happen at Sonoma. If another bad crash happens or God forbid someone gets hurt, that might be a good backup in case their fixes at the Sonoma Raceway do not work out in their favor, or at least in the ways that they anticipate them working out. But Circuit of the Americas, would probably need a couple layout changes to be more conductive for stock car racing, particularly in the S section through the first 10 or so turns. It was a little bit hard to get stock cars stuck in there. It's not like how Sonoma's S is. You can kind of take straight with just a little bit of deviation, working the transmission up through the hills. There's a lot of elevation changes. Circuit of the Americas, being a Tilka racetrack in particular, doesn't have much elevation change. It's all manufactured elevation from, earth movers and stuff like that. Sonoma just literally goes up a hill, comes back down a hill, and has small crests along with it, which makes the elevation natural, much like what we see at Watkins Glen, Laguna Seca, so on, so forth. The crest up at Mossport, stuff like that. I feel like Circuit of the Americas would need a little bit more character to be a truly good NASCAR road course. And character is something that the track needs to earn over time. That's exactly what a track like Sonoma or Watkins Glen has, and Circuit of the Americas, being a mostly engineered racetrack, doesn't really have that. Even though it has, the glass tower, it has all these, fancy attributes about it, doesn't have the character that really makes it into a good racetrack, and that's what I feel like it's missing at the moment for stock car racing in particular. For Formula One, it blended into the rest of the racetracks, probably just due to Tilka, but for stock car racing, it needs some more character, I believe, to be on the schedule. I don't think it needed repaved. I would have loved to see the track stay with that old surface that it had, but if they wouldn't have repaved Circuit of the Americas last season, I think that it would have been a little bit more conductive for stock car racing this year. So SMI might need to take that into account if they do in fact buy the Speedway, to keep the racetrack surface kind of aging and let it wear in to give the track more character as well. Because we all talk about you want the surface to be old on a racetrack so that it builds that character and opens up lanes. It works kind of the same on a road course, even though it might not initially sound like it will. It makes the track harder to drive, brings it more into the driver's hands instead of when the track is, more or less smooth. So it would be a rather good decision, I believe, for SMI to try and get the track, as it's not only a fallback for Sonoma, but also a market that they probably need after having some struggles with the Texas Motor Speedway as of late, getting attendance, having good races, stuff like that. There's a lot of factors that would go into it, but I could see them making that decision, especially with the financial troubles the current owners are going through. From NASCAR, UT fan, very small follow-up to this. Is it possible for Miami, the street course that F1 is going to possibly gain at least a truck date? To be honest with you, if Miami wants to be a part of NASCAR, I don't see them going after the truck series. I personally see them trying to get a cup date at first. But with NASCAR's market, they personally own the Homestead Miami Speedway as well as local area, city officials. I don't see them deviating from that speedway whatsoever. It would be kind of a neat situation to get Cup cars racing at the Miami Street Circuit, but I personally feel like if we're going to stay in Miami, which is a good decision, Homestead area, Miami-Dade County, I personally believe it will be done at the Homestead Miami Speedway. I don't see the F1 circuit getting into NASCAR anytime soon. What I do see is potentially maybe that Nashville Street Circuit, but the Nashville Fairgrounds holds such a big presence in NASCAR ever since its re-edition. The fans absolutely love that racetrack. It's short track racing at its finest. I don't really see that happening either. That's what keeps making NASCAR's efforts to get a street circuit harder and harder, is because why race at the Miami Street Circuit when you have the Homestead Miami Speedway? Great racetrack. Why race at the Nashville Street Circuit when you have the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway and the Nashville Super Speedway, which Dover keeps knocking on the door for to get that track cup race? There's so much going on there that it kind of forces out two potential options for a street circuit. So right now, NASCAR is still looking for what they can do to get a street circuit on the schedule, but it's not looking too good at the moment. But Toronto actually looks like the most likely opportunity for NASCAR to actually try and really do it. And now the final question from Jackson Nantle. F1 has just announced they will be running on a Miami Street Circuit in 2022. Any chance we could see NASCAR running on this track in the future? Kind of funny we got a similar question 2 in a row. But like I said, don't really see it happening because of NASCAR's huge involvement with the Homestead Miami Speedway. Now, if, let's say, Roger Penske owned the Homestead Miami Speedway, things would be a little bit different. If anybody else really owned the track, I kind of doubt that they would be running there as frequently as they do, but there are even rumors right now that Homestead could get 2 races. And right now we don't have very many tracks with 2 dates. Homestead being one of them that is being considered to get a second date, as well as Las Vegas. But considering that Vegas has the All-Star race for this year, they don't need a second date. But next year, the All-Star race might be at a different racetrack. We don't currently know, because NASCAR figures that out each year, and likely they're going to go back to the old system of having the All-Star race change which racetrack it's at yearly, instead of just having it at like Charlotte every single year like it was for a span of over 30 seasons. However, Miami Street Circuit, I don't really see it happening. As neat as it would be, I just don't think that the right opportunity is there for NASCAR to take advantage of that street circuit. I think that's just an F1 setup thing. But I would say Homestead Miami Speedway is very comfortable with its spot on the schedule. I don't see that being usurped anytime soon. And folks, that does it for episode number 6 of Post Tech. We hope you have all enjoyed it. The next time you'll be seeing us will be for NASCAR's All-Star Weekend at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway, starting up with the All-Star Open, where NASCAR's Cup Series drivers who have yet to win so far in the 2021 season try to make it in their final shot to make the big show, the All-Star Race, later on that day. Then the All-Star Race, we're going to give you full coverage of that event, where NASCAR's finest Cup Series drivers go for the big $1 million prize at the end of the race. And the next time you'll be seeing us on Post Tech, we will not be covering a race in any sort of highlight form, because the Pennzoil 400 race weekend does not have a Camping World Truck Series event. The Camping World Truck Series already got the Strat 200 done during the All-Star Week, so it is just one more week off for the Camping World Truckers. However, we will be going over all the events of the All-Star race and answering fan-sent-in questions from folks just like you. And so, we'll be seeing you at Las Vegas Motor Speedway this weekend for the All-Star Open. We'll see you then.